Our psukim today describe the process by which the Jewish people accepted Purim for perpetuity for themselves and their children after them. When the pasuk describes it, it adds kind of an enigmatic phrase at the very end. It talks about how the Jewish people accepted to observe the days of Purim as Mordechai and Esther had instructed them. And then it has this phrase, Divrat Samos V'Zakasam, the matters of fasting and their crying out. So the question is, what exactly is the significance of this phrase, the matter of their fasting and their crying out? How is that connected to their acceptance of Purim as a holiday? Some sources actually want to see this as a reference, an oblique reference, to the institution of Tanis Esther. And again, according to those opinions that want to view Tanis Esther as really a very ancient part of the whole Purim process, they would interpret this as that the Jews accepted not only the celebration of Purim, but the observance of Tanis Esther as well. However, there's some difficulty with that, especially given the fact that we have no record of Tanis Esther being observed until much later than the time of the Megillah. The Ibn Ezra has a very different read of the end of this pasuk, which I think has great significance. He suggests that what it means, the matters of fasting and crying out, is that the Megillah is suggesting that the halachic basis on which Purim was added to the calendar is identical to that of the almost simultaneous adoption of the fast days connected to the destruction of the first temple. Right? We know from the prophet Zechariah, who was a contemporary of the events of the Megillah, that he writes about the fact that it had become an entrenched custom among the Jewish people to fast on the 4 fast days of Asar B'Teves, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalia, which represented the trajectory of the destruction of the first temple. And what the Megillah is basically saying is the same way that halachically the Jewish people accepted on themselves these additions to the calendar, that so too the Jewish people here are accepting the celebration of redemption of Purim as also obligatory upon themselves and their descendants. And again, I think this opens up a very intriguing window to think about this whole period. Again, throughout the entire period of Tanakh until the destruction of the first temple, nothing to the best of our knowledge is added to the Jewish calendar, right? Even though, again, great miracles transpire during the period of the entry into Eretz Yisrael and under the kings, but nothing is added to the calendar. It is only as part of commemorating the destruction of the first temple that we really have this addition of new dates. Here, too, we have for the first time the addition of a new festival. And again, I think that there's a lot to think about in terms of what it was that led the leaders of the Jewish people at this time to feel that this was something that was necessary to do, to be able to commemorate both the great and the tragic events of Jewish history and to establish them as permanent observances for the Jewish people.